Okay, good evening, everybody. We'll make a start. Apologies, we are a couple of minutes late. Tonight is a special meeting of the Executive to consider the draft revenue budget proposals for 2020-21 and also the 3-year medium-term financial strategy. Item 1 is attendances. Just to advise that I have received apologies from Councillors Bohr, Harding and Wright. Reminder, of course, as always, that the meeting is being webcast. So just a reminder, microphones on when you're talking and remember to switch them off at the end. Item 2 is questions from members of the public. None have been received. Item 3, any declarations of interest in any items on the agenda? Okay. Item 4 is the draft revenue budget proposals as just outlined. Councillor Ross, please.
Thank you, Leader. It gives me great pleasure to present this year's draft budget to Executive. And first of all, I'd like to thank Nikki Bishop and the team in finance for all the hard work, and across the corporate directorships for all the hard work that they put into putting this draft proposal together. The thing that I'd like you to note, first of all, is the current gap stands at, well, at the moment, £800,000 that we need to seek between now and the budget itself in February. That number has gone up since the publication of this because of the government's decision to increase the interest rate for the Public Works Loans Board. They did that by surprise last week, which obviously has had implications through the income that we get through. Nevertheless, you will see the changes as set out in front of you. You will see that there's going to be some further investment into the adult and children's care areas. We are looking at various other changes which will be subject to a couple of scrutiny meetings over the course of the rest of this year in preparation for the February budget. And you will note the decision to opt for the adult social care precept, as well as an increase in the council tax rate of 1.99%. This has taken a lot of work to get us to this stage. It's, as I say, taken a lot of officer work. In spite of the challenges nationally that we face, both in terms of the funding pressures, and I'd like to at this point draw your attention to the projected funding pressures over the medium term of 9.91 million next year and a further 5.35 million in 22-23. Despite this, we've come to a healthier position than we've had for a number of years at this stage. And also, finally, thanks to a lot of lobbying from our council here, we've got some much needed higher needs block funding for children with special educational needs. So that is some good news, and that is largely thanks to a lot of lobbying from this council and other councils across the UK. So with that, I'm very happy to take any questions people may have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ross. Any questions or comments from members of the Executive? Questions or comments more widely? Councillor Myers, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. 2 questions, really. On page 25 of the report, section 4.3, there's an item in there for £80,000, just 4 items up from the bottom of the list, about moving to billing services online, which, if you read, obviously, the Appendix D, it refers to savings in postage and printing generally. The question is that a realistic saving, and which areas will that affect? Then the second question, and my final question, is in the paragraph above it, 4.4.2, there's £144,000 review of the car parking enforcement charges. Is that a change to the actual amount that people will pay who are guilty of parking badly, or an increase in the number of people that we expect to fine? Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Nikki.
Okay, so I'll answer the first one, which is moving billing services online. Actually, this is a saving which we already have in the bag, if you like. It's people have moved themselves onto online billing for council tax, etc. And so we have discovered that our printing and postage costs have already gone down by this amount. So it's taking out an amount from the budget that we have noticed this year. I'll hand over to Richard for the car parking.
Yeah, on the car parking, we're not proposing to increase the amount of fine that is levied on an individual car park. Is there a bit of an echo? So I think there's a dodgy wire. We're not proposing to increase the actual fine. This is about a result of us putting more enforcement staff. More enforcement staff, so we're able to enforce more widely, and therefore, as a result, hopefully, will improve availability of car parking spaces. But if people are parking illegally, then it will increase the amount of fine income coming into the authority.
Councillor Coggins.
Thank you. And yeah, we want to welcome various things in here. The funding to the high needs and the social care funding increases are very welcome. We also want to welcome some of the changes that we have called for, or the result of Green Party motions, the carbon neutral study on page 51. I see the district heating network, tree maintenance and so on page 51 as well, and the wildflower areas on page 45. I wanted to ask a few questions. Given that we're at the end of over a decade of underfunding, and the fact that we're spending less on services than any other similar metropolitan borough, did the executive consider a referendum and raising council tax even further?
Yeah, that is something that we do consider, and it's considered every year. I'm not a big fan of referenda, and I have to say I don't think I don't think had we put this to the people of Trafford, I think that the answer would have been that they would have rejected the proposals to increase it. But yeah, I do accept what you say. We are a very underfunded local authority, and we continue to lobby the government for more funding.
If I may, thanks. And yeah, I accept. Obviously, we wouldn't want to spend the money on a referendum unless we had a good chance of it being put through. If I can add a few more questions, the last year changes were agreed to the car parking charges, extending the length of time that we were charging for, which I believe are not being implemented in this. I'm just wondering, given the cost pressures, that some of those cost pressures are coming from public health, which of course this isn't going to help at all, giving our town centre air pollution and the climate emergency issues. Is this a wise choice at this point in time? Thanks.
Thank you. What I would say is there's going to be a couple of budget scrutiny events coming up. So I would encourage you to feed in those comments. Obviously, they've been recorded here now, but I would encourage you to feed in those comments at budget scrutiny stage as well, and then they'll be considered as part of the final report.
If I had kind of one last one, just on page 47, I see we've got, again, a civic vehicle reserve of £32,000. Again, just given the state we're in and given our priorities and what we know about public health and so on, is this again going to be the best way of reserving this money for, I guess, repairing and replacing the civic car? Would it be better spent on our Ofsted problems or the climate emergency, and let the mayor find other more affordable ways of getting around? Thanks.
Well, I don't know how I feel about answering this one. I would say, again, that is a point that I would encourage you to make as part of the budget scrutiny process. You've obviously picked up on a line in there that I, in all honesty, I hadn't noted myself, but it is something that, it's part of the scrutiny process. So if you raise it there, and then it can be considered as part of the final budget.
Councillor Welton.
Just looking at page 34, 8.3.2, which outlines the key priorities of the 2019-20 capital expenditure programme. I was just wondering if there was consideration given to making the climate emergency a key priority, and if it was considered, were there any reasons why it wasn't adopted as a key priority at this stage?
Thank you. This is this year's capital programme. We haven't yet set next year's. That will come down the line. But again, this is all useful. And obviously, we have declared a climate emergency in the council. So looking at ways of using capital spend to tackle that would be very important for us all.
It's also worth remembering the lines that are in there drawn out by Councillor Coggins. I think she suggested the district heat network was a green initiative. It certainly wasn't, actually. It's one that we've been working on for some time. I don't recall you ever suggesting that. But regardless, I think that there is some money set aside already for green initiatives. Clearly, capitalisation would be the main route for us to look to make interventions as appropriate. But regardless, that is something that we'll come to in due course. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. So the recommendations are as at page 2 of the report. It's just worth noting, because it doesn't set out there, that obviously these recommendations and the paper are not subject to call-in because they are going before scrutiny in any event. Just like to take the opportunity to add my personal thanks to both individual members of the executive, particularly Councillor Ross, Nikki, yourself, and all of your team and the team more widely, not just CLT, but I know this is an arduous task every year for all of our staff. I think you've done an excellent job, and to be in a position where we are left with now an £800,000 funding gap at draft budget stage is a significant improvement on recent years. So my sincere thanks to all involved for that. Okay, so with that, the recommendations as set out at page 2, are they approved? Aye. Thank you. There is no urgent business of which I am aware, and no need for the exclusion resolution. So at that, I will draw the meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.